Well, despite those heroics from Raya, there were more drop points for Arsenal, and it means that there's a 15-point gap between Arsenal and the league leaders, Liverpool. The Gunners do have a game in hand, but it is looking more and more likely that the trophy will be heading to Merseyside. What is very much not decided is which teams will secure Champions League football next term. There's only 7 points separating the same number of teams. European football could be on the cards for pretty much anyone in the top half and possibly into the bottom half of the table as well. At the other end, none of the bottom three secured a point this weekend, so it just left Wolves to lift themselves further above the drop zone. That gap is now 6 points. We'll be discussing that battle to survive in more depth in part 3, but we are going to start with yesterday's game at Old Trafford. With us today, Owen Hargreaves, Flo Lloyd-Hughes is here. Righty, it's not impossible for Arsenal. If you were going to sum up the difficulty level, though, what would you say?
Well, you're kind of getting close to impossible, Kels. I'm not joking. It's tough now. I thought it was a game that you probably needed to win just so as then you can win the next game. Because remember, Arsenal have got to win all of the games. So to win the next game, and I thought that they needed something out of that yesterday, but I thought when you looked at the way we were trying to create, it just kept continually falling short at the critical point, the final ball, the pass through, everything. It just looks to me like a team. As the fact that the strikers, people keep saying about strikers, but the forwards that have been needed for the whole of this season, you probably needed them in a game like that yesterday. And it was a shame you didn't see someone like Raheem Sterling come off the bench. They put on Kieran Tierney instead, which says a lot about what he thinks of that situation. So it really felt a bit like of a resignation yesterday. You're seeing something that, I hope this team now, they have to find something to keep going. Watch behind your back now, because it looks like it's Liverpool's. So you just have to keep going and finish the season really well now, I think.
That was what was interesting about the game, that Man United really galvanised themselves for this match. But for Arsenal, what do you put down the fact that that it wasn't working for them in the final third?
I actually thought they played really well first half. If they took one or two of those chances, I think they would have won the game quite comfortably. But then one long ball from Onana at the end of it, Mazraoui wins a flick, Garnacho gets a free kick and Bruno scores. Up to that point, I don't think United barely had the ball and barely had a shot on target.
I don't think they did.
And I think Arsenal had loads of time to kind of figure that out and get back into the game. But I do think they were probably shocked by that goal because they were so dominant, Arsenal. And I'm with Wrighty. They played nice up into the box, but if you think you're going to go to Old Trafford with Neri's an amazing player, but he's only 17. That's the first bad game I've seen him out. And Marino as a number 9. I think that in a way, they've overachieved being second with that, playing like that without a striker.
The injuries
are remarkable. So I think Mikel's done a brilliant job. But again, to go to Old Trafford in March, when you need to win a game to win the trophy, you need more than one striker. They don't even have a striker. Kai Havertz is a striker, and he's injured. Saka's injured. They need at least 2 more bodies, I think, to compete. They needed
that before the injuries came.
They need 2 more bodies to compete with the top. I think they've done amazing to even be second with, lacking a number 9.
Yeah, but it looks as though that game at Old Trafford might be the one that sort of tipped people from saying, well, it's probably going to end up in Liverpool hands, to this is looking pretty much, as Wrighty said, nearly impossible for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think so. And the injury issues, the fact that they're still a problem, I don't see the situation changing. If you could say there are a lot of players coming back quite quickly, the fact is for Havertz and Gabriel Jesus, those are long-term absences. And Saka, I think obviously he's going to be back a little bit sooner than the rest, but they won't want to rush him because that is the type of injury that can become a long-term problem for a player, and they need him so much. And obviously it's probably good for a lot of international players with no Euros this summer, because I think a lot of England players are kind of suffering as a result of that. But I don't see a way in a corner can be turned for Arsenal because there's not a transfer window now for this rest of the season, and they don't have these players coming back. We think that will change everything. This is the squad they've got to work with, and that's the best they can get. And I agree with Owen as well. I think in the situation they're in without having a striker, I think they're still playing well, but there's no focal point, there's no penetration whatsoever. It's all kind of movement outside the box. The person doing the most running and getting to good positions is Declan Rice. He is the one who is getting run into the box, is trying to get into good areas, trying to make things happen. And I think that's a lot of pressure on him. He's already kind of taking on a big load and a big responsibility. But I think without him, I don't see ways they can be dangerous.
Yeah.
But we keep coming back to this point about injuries for Arsenal across the course of this season. When you look at the list of players who are injured, and when you look at the reasons for their injuries, is there an argument that they could have managed this a little bit better? One of the reasons that Arne Slot was brought into Liverpool was his ability to keep players fit. If it's hamstring injuries, if it's are they the kind of injuries that come because of can you
Well,
look
saying
at
they're
them?
working too hard in training?
What I'm wondering, well, we don't know if they're working too hard in training. But are they the kind of questions that Arsenal will be asking come the end of the season? Are there ways that we could have kept those players fit for more of the season?
They're going to have to, Kels, because we had a season last season. Because now all of a sudden, I think what we're going to do, we're going to blame the sports science department. When last season we hardly had any injuries. And we saw the season before we did.
Even if you go to the season before, it was Saliba at the end, which was a back injury, and it was. I just wonder if there was something.
Yeah, but then the question is, Kels, was it luck? Because obviously you're losing Saliba, so was it luck last season, or was it the sports science? Because it's something that they're going to have to look at. Because when you look at some of those injuries, there's 3 of those injuries are hamstring injuries, which is obviously says which is a lot of work as to why your hamstring in the end goes. And we've seen with Saka, I think it came away. It's a massive injury that he's had to have surgery on. And that is always a worry to hear when you're having surgery on a hamstring, because normally it's a pull. But yeah, those things will have to be looked at.
Going off to warm weather training and getting injured on warm weather. In Dubai they went to, wasn't it, for their warm weather training? Well, does that set any alarm bells ringing for you, do you think?
With that one, I'm not... I don't know what to say.
I just mean in the
the
mix,
thing is because you're going out there and it could have been innocuous the way it happened, with the hamstring, you know what I mean, winding down, whatever it is. I don't know how it came about, but then if it's something that could have been avoided, Kels, I'm sure that they're not going to have someone like Kai Havertz on the break doing sprints. So it would have been something that's happened maybe in the game. I don't know what the scenario was, but again, because it's a hamstring injury, because of the amount of games that Hazard has had to play, the work that, remember, these players have to do for Mikel and getting back as well, because even with Jesus injured himself on the edge of our area when he got injured, when he done his hamstring. So there's a lot of work that's going into it. So those things probably have to be looked at. Of course they do. Because in the end, you have to point to, the injuries have cost us to a certain extent, but can we avoid those? And we have to find a way too. And
they have been particularly prevalent in terms of attacking players for Arsenal. That's where they've really missed that. And the question is constantly asked, do Arsenal need another striker? And they were asked actually before the injuries as well. Mikel Arteta's absolutely sick of that question at the moment. Yeah, but is it a valid one to ask?
Well, I don't even think it's just a striker. Of course they need a striker. If anything, they probably need 2. But if you look at, they let Eddie Nketiah go, maybe rightly so because he wasn't getting game time. But again, to give Kai the opportunity to get a rest, give Saka a rest. These guys played too much. I think Arsenal were lucky these guys didn't break down last year. They were so stable in the fact that and maybe that's why they didn't recruit players. They thought these boys would be fit, but actually it's not a surprise that they've broken down, because you can't keep playing 60 games at high intensity with the demands, mentally, physically, emotionally. I think it's a lot to ask of anyone. So if you had Smith Rowe, if you had Reece Nelson, if you had Nketiah, Balogun, if you would have had someone, you could have played them for 15 games each, and give Saka and Havertz and Ødegaard a little bit of a rest. So I do think that they're short in terms of numbers, but I do think they need a couple of strikers, not just one.
The summer, I think, flow is massive.
They're going to spend big, aren't they?
They have to. I think it's go big or go home, honestly. And obviously they're going to have a new sporting director coming in. And there'll be a lot of expectation and pressure on them. But I think they have to go huge, because I think, unfortunately, we're in an era now where people have had to try and keep up with Manchester City and the obviously kind of legacy of those wins and the squad that they built and what they invested. And then you're now maybe at the beginning of what Arne Slot could do with Liverpool, and they're going to tool up again in the summer. Yep. So how are you going to match that? Because being second best and chasing and not being good enough, there's nothing to show for that. And a lot of people obviously understandably give Arsenal credit for pushing City as far as they have in recent seasons. But they have to try and keep up and deliver more, because I just don't think it's enough to say on its own that that is an achievement. And they have to go big. And I think the physical demands of the game now are just so different than they even were in, Fergie's dominance time in terms of, I know Scouted, who, do loads of work on kind of young players and write about them. They did a graph about how the individual sprints that players are having to make and the physical demands on their body have changed so much even in the last 10 years. So you're having to really recruit athletes first and then technically gifted footballers second. And I think, unfortunately, when you're competing with the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool, who've probably been a bit lucky with how few injuries they've had, I think it's really tough. Or
have managed their season well. If you've got a manager we'll come to Liverpool in a second, but from what we read, this was one of the attributes that came into the mix in terms of appointing Arne Slot.
And Liverpool was an ability
to manage players over the season. And when you start to get injuries, then you've got a narrow pool of players to choose from, and the problem.
But they have two players for every position. Liverpool. Goalkeeper, full-backs, centre-backs, centre-mid. They got 10 strikers.
Arne Slot's playing style is a little less intense as maybe like Klopp, and maybe that
in a post-Euro season. That's maybe a more sensible way to go.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Right. Just in terms of the demands on the players' bodies, but I just wonder, with the new sporting director coming in, how much of a difference you think that will make across this summer, and because there was a point made in the coverage yesterday of the game, and I can't remember who made the point, but that it feels that in the transfer market at times Arsenal have been playing catch up. It's everybody else because they need to sort out the defence. Then the defenders came in. Then everybody's been saying for ages they need a striker, and they haven't quite got there yet. But now that seems like it's a priority.
Maybe Andrea Berta, who I'm quite pleased is coming now, and he can really have a look at everything what's there, set up and what's going on. I think it's great that they haven't brought Ato, I think his name's Ato, Jason Ato, up from who was helping Edu, because I think that probably Mikel needs another voice as well, a voice of experience,
I would find it tough to score in this Man United team, says Andy Cole as Premier League legend defends Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee's struggles under Ruben Amorim. Manchester United legend Andy Cole weighed in on his former side's struggles in front of goal this season and revealed he is sympathetic towards the Red Devils' dire fortunes under Ruben Amorim. United are on track to log their worst goal-scoring tally in a Premier League campaign ever, eclipsing Louis van Gaal's final season in 2015-16 when they scored 49 goals. So far this season, United have netted just 33 in 27 league games. At this rate, they are set to finish the season on 46 goals. Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee have often been the focal point of criticism for the Red Devils' attacking woes. The duo have managed just 5 Premier League goals this season combined, 2 and 3 respectively. But Cole, who bagged 187 goals in the English top flight, insisted that even he would find it tough in Amorim's side, citing the lack of senior role models at United. Speaking exclusively to Mail Sport, the Premier League's 4th highest goal scorer in history said, I was very fortunate that, during my time at Manchester United, I had established individuals that I could go and learn from. Andy Cole explained that he has sympathy for Manchester United amid their difficult campaign. Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee have scored a combined 5 league goals this season. These guys, Højlund and Zirkzee, have been thrown in the deep end, 2 young guys having to hit the ground running with no senior professionals to try and guide them through things. If I was to come to Manchester United and they were under the pressure they are at the moment, I would find it tough. These guys are naturally finding it tough. They're not scoring goals, the team in general are not scoring goals, and of course it's going to reflect on those 2 guys, Højlund and Zirkzee. Amid United's difficulties this season, a multitude of forwards have been earmarked with a move to Old Trafford, including Victor Osimhen, Christopher Nkunku and Victor Gyökeres. In light of these links, there were also talks of Zirkzee being shipped off on loan in January, just months after he joined last summer. Cole went on to state that transfer rumors are part and parcel of being a United striker, noting that he was also a victim of such speculation during the club's golden years under Sir Alex Ferguson. I've got sympathy for every single one of these guys because I know what it's like to be a centre forward for Manchester United, the 53-year-old added. Manchester United were winning everything, and if you weren't scoring for a couple of games, the media were on the case, saying Manchester United are buying every single centre forward in the world. Cole, who scored 187 top-flight goals, admitted even he would struggle in this United side. Xerxes has scored just 5 goals this season after joining for €36 million from Bologna last summer. Meanwhile, Højlund has not found the back of the net since December 12 to 19 games ago. Despite United being on course to blow almost every Premier League worst in club history out of the water this season, Cole doubled down on his optimism, arguing that Amorim can still be the man to turn it around. With Højlund and Xerxes, I have nothing but sympathy for them. I have nothing but sympathy for those guys, the manager as well. He's come in, he wants to do it his way, and rightly so. It will turn around. Bad times don't last forever and good times always follow bad times. With all things concerned, Manchester United will turn it around in the end. Xerxes added to his goal-scoring account on Thursday night, netting his side's only goal in their 1-1 draw with Real Sociedad in the Europa League last 16. Meanwhile, Højlund extended his dry patch to 19 games, as the Danish forward has still not scored since December 12. United go into their next Premier League fixture languishing in 14th place in the table, as they prepare to face Arsenal at Old Trafford on Sunday.